Okay, all ready to go. Grab a toothpick. What's that? Oh, that's where the marker pen was, those two dots. I just thought that was a bit of grease or something. It wasn't. And I'll just clean these blades. And then I'll have a close look at them. Because they had some marks on them, but I couldn't tell whether it was corrosion or possibly a greasy fingerprint. I'm not the first person to have this camera apart. They look good, so pop those back in. First blade. Yeah, it just pops over the fixed screw there and the moving pivot. The second blade, it's the same deal. That's how that works. Now the cover plate. I'll wipe that with solvent, make sure that there's any traces of oil or contaminants are gone. But the cotton buds are coming away very clean, so it tells me that there's not an awful lot of oil contamination of any there. Let's pop that up on that block. Make sure those blades are seated. Get that spring hooked back over there. And have a look at my retaining plate. Make sure I've got it the right way up. Having a look at the mounting holes in the body. There's one there and one there. It's not that way up. Is it that way up? Oops, back where I started. I think it's the other way. That looks like it. Drop that down into place. Line up my screw holes. Both screw holes line up. So it must be right. It can only go in one way. Just pop my screws in. And let's use a smaller screwdriver. Start that one. These are very, very short screws. You only get about a turn, and possibly even less than that doing them up. Right, well that should retain those blades in place. I'm just turning it over to have a look. And they were quite marked to start off with at the back face. They look nice and clean now. I think that'll do. So that's our diaphragm all back into the outer case, and we can assemble the inner to the outer now. And what do I need to know? This lever here cocks the shutter. So I'm just looking to see which way it pushes that thing, and it pushes it that way, pushes it in that direction. So I want to be on that side. What did I say? Pushes it that way. Pushes that round clockwise. So this needs to start in the anti-clockwise position. And I've got to hook this lever in through that gap and behind that piece there. And if I do it correctly, it'll all go very smoothly indeed, drop into place, and there'll be no problems. At least that's the theory. But 3 screws retain the outer case and hold the outer case and the mechanism plate together. They all look much the same. They were the ones that were a bit short on paint, weren't they? Yeah, they'd been treated roughly, presumably in the assembly, possibly when someone's been servicing it in the past. My screwdrivers need to be demagnetised. They're great at lifting screws up. Not so good when you're trying to put them back. Right, turn it over. What have I got? That action works correctly. Now here, where this lever contacts that boss to cock the shutter, some copal shutters have a little collar on here, a freely rotating collar, which changes the angle of attack slightly because it moves the relative position of this lever further this way and makes it easier to move. This one doesn't seem to have a collar there, and I don't know whether it's because it never had one or whether it's been lost. But it does look like it's going to work, so I'm fairly confident that that's good to go. What have I got left to do now? Well, the last task I'll do will be to clean and install the slow speed gear train or retard gear train. I do have to clean and install the shutter release, the B lever spring there, and its retaining screw. I'm looking at the screws now to see what I've mixed up. No, it's not that one. That is its retaining screw. I have to install the flash contact, the post it rides on, its return spring, and the screw that retains it. I also have to reinstall the flash components, the 2 insulators, the screw, and there will be a cable here somewhere, the wire with the nut trapped on the end of it, which I have just lost for the moment. I'm looking in my box of tricks. This lever here needs to go back. That's the one with the overwound, the spring that wound right round. And I'm just left with 2 screws, which I know hold the retard gear train in place. So I'll pop those away with that. And I think I will, that goes in late in the piece. The flash contact and its related spring and boss and screw go in later. The flash contact will do that second, because I've got to go and get the wire for that anyway. So I will start with these components. That's the shutter release, and we'll just give that a quick swab down to make sure all the dirt and dust and dried oils and things are off it. And to tell the truth, it looks quite clean. I suppose that shouldn't be much of a surprise, the rest of it's been pretty clean. I'll just check the underside, make sure that's clean too. It's good. This sits in the shutter here. Its spring which I have to tension a bit to get on there, I think. The spring must fit over that boss, that bush there. I'm a bit reluctant to go down. I'll lift that out. I'm not sure why that's so reluctant to go over there. Oh, there's a bit of a collar there. Let's put that over the top of that to start off with. And let's put it in one piece. That's it, that's just floating there at the moment, but that's not going anywhere. The B lever. Let's wipe that. That's good. That pops on the top. It sits right here. The spring, I think I can fit the spring on last of all, so I won't fight with it now. We'll get the screw in place. And then we'll get the spring sorted out. So that screw just should fit down through the lever, through the bush on that release arm. That's okay. That's in place. I'll just leave that slightly loose. I just want to get the spring out now for that shutter release arm, which needs to fit behind this bush, this brass point here. Let's see if I can get this out. I've got it. I don't know if I can feed that through under there. Let's see if I can. Right. Bring it across with a screwdriver. And hopefully I can grasp it with my tweezers and pull it through. No, that's not happening. Let's just take that lever off the top, the screw out. Let's take the screw out, lift off the B lever, hold that down and I'll hook that spring on without it jumping off and flying across the room. There we go. That's better. The spring is now acting against the centre here and that brass stud there. Right, so the B lever can go back on, and that sits there. I'll run that screw in, check that those move freely, and they do. Right, a better size screwdriver for that, I think. That's better. There's a little tiny thread of loose brass there that's broken off the edge of that screw. I'll make sure I get rid of that because I don't want any tiny shavings of metal floating around loose in the shutter to jam things up. Right, so all I'm left with really is that spring here for the B lever, and it fits over the screw there. Let's see if I can get that on in one piece without a fight and without losing it. Well, that was almost too easy. Alright, so that's in place. The B lever would be blocked from falling down by the position of the speed control plate cam. So that's good. That's nice and free. That all works correctly. And if I move this cocking ring, the shutter should cock. And it does. And there we have it. The shutter is working. So now the flash sync stuff. I've got to find that wire. Back in a minute.